Hey guys, tonight we are going to try and get some sleep, which I know is the entire point of this channel. But tonight, we're going to do it Roman style. We're going to leave behind our weighted blankets, our blackout curtains, and our white noise machines, and travel back to a time when a good night's rest was not a lifestyle choice, but a nightly challenge against noise, fear, and some very questionable medical advice. Imagine you are standing on a street corner in the city of Rome sometime in the 2nd century AD. The day is ending. The sun, a heavy, molten gold coin, is sinking behind the 7 hills, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. The heat of the day still radiates up from the great paving stones of the street, a warmth you can feel through the thin leather of your sandals. The noise of the day, the endless clamor of the forum, the shouting of merchants, the rumbling of a million conversations, is finally starting to change its tune. It's softening just a little. The crowds are thinning as people begin to make their way home, or to the baths to wash away the city's grime. The air is thick with the smells of a metropolis. There's the scent of wood smoke from 1,000 cooking fires, the rich aroma of baking bread from a nearby pastrinum, the sharp, salty tang of garam, that infamous Roman fermented fish, sauce drifting from a food stall, and underneath it all, the ever-present, pungent odor of a million people living in very close quarters without the benefit of a modern sewage system. This is our starting point, a vibrant, noisy, fragrant, and profoundly alive city at the moment of sundown tonight. We're going to follow a Roman citizen from this street corner through their evening rituals and into the quiet, dark sanctuary of their bedroom, their cubiculum. We'll learn what they ate to help them sleep, the potions they drank, the gods they prayed to, and what they feared in the deep, dark, unlit Roman night. It's a journey into the mundane, the intimate, and the deeply relatable human quest for a decent 8 hours. Of course, before we get too comfortable, the usual reality check. You, with your 21st century immune system and delicate sensibilities, would probably not survive this. Let's be perfectly honest. The water, drawn from aqueducts that were engineering marvels, but certainly not sterile, would likely introduce you to microbes your body has never dreamed of. The street food, while probably delicious, was a game of culinary roulette. The cure for the ensuing digestive apocalypse would likely involve a stern lecture from a physician about balancing your 4 humors and a medicinal wine infused with herbs, lead, and a cheerful dose of opium. So yes, a fascinating time to visit, but perhaps not the best for your long-term health. But you don't need to worry about any of that. You are a silent observer, a ghost from the future, ready to drift through the ancient world. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support is the quiet fuel that keeps this little historical time machine running. And, as always, feel free to post your location and your local time in the comments. It's always wonderful to see where in the world you're all settling down to sleep. It's just after 12:45 a.m. here in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and the city is finally growing quiet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first impression as you stand on this. Roman Street is one of overwhelming density. At its peak, the city of Rome was home to perhaps 1 million people, all packed into a surprisingly compact area. It was one of the most densely populated places on Earth before the Industrial Age, a sprawling mass of humanity. This density dictated everything, especially the two starkly different worlds of Roman housing. If you are wealthy, patrician, you turn off the main thoroughfare and enter a quieter side street. You arrive at the door of your domus. From the outside, it's an unremarkable, often windowless wall. But the moment you step through the doorway, the noise of the city falls away. You are in a private, inward-facing world of surprising tranquility. You walk through the short entrance hall, the fauces, into the central atrium. It's a large, open-air courtyard with a rectangular pool, the impluvium. In the center, to catch the rainwater that falls through the opening in the roof above the compluvium. The rooms of the house, the dining rooms, the offices, the bedrooms open onto this quiet, private space. It's a sanctuary designed to keep the chaos of the city at bay. This is where a good night's sleep is possible, but for the vast majority of Romans, this is a fantasy. If you are a common person, a plebeian, your journey home is very different. You dive into a maze of narrow, winding alleyways, stepping over piles of refuse and dodging streams of wastewater. You look up, and the sky is just a thin sliver between the leaning, teetering apartment buildings known as insulae or islands. These were the high-rises of the ancient world, often built shoddily with timber and cheap brick, sometimes 6 or 7 stories high. You live on the 4th floor. Your home is a single, small, cramped room that you might share with your entire family. There is no running water, no kitchen, no toilet. The walls are thin, so you hear every argument, every cough, every cry from your neighbors, and the ever-present danger of fire or collapse hangs in the air. This is where most Romans slept, and for them, a quiet, peaceful night was a rare and precious luxury. As the sun disappears completely, the sounds of the city change. During the day, Most wheeled traffic was banned from the city center to prevent gridlock. Historians still argue whether this ban was universally enforced or if the wealthy and powerful could easily obtain exemptions for their fancy carriages. But with the coming of night, the ban was lifted. Now, the heavy supply carts, which have been waiting outside the city gates all day, begin to rumble in over the stone roads, their iron-rimmed wheels creating a deafening clatter. This is a soundtrack that will continue for much of the night, and with the darkness comes fear. The Roman night was a place of danger, both real and imagined. Crime was a constant worry. The city did have a combination police force and fire brigade, the vigils urbani, established by the Emperor Augustus. These 7,000 men patrolled the city at night, armed with buckets of water and axes to fight the frequent fires that broke out in the insulae, and clubs to deal with burglars and troublemakers. But they couldn't be everywhere. Robberies and assaults were common in the unlit alleyways. This was the world a Roman had to navigate before they could even think about sleep. A world of intense social closeness, of jarring noise, and of palpable nightly danger. It's no wonder, then, that they put a great deal of thought into the rituals, the medicines, and the prayers that might help them find a few hours of peaceful oblivion. Their quest for a good night's sleep began long before their head ever hit the pillow. It began now in the fading light, as they made their way to the one place that offered a universal escape from the stress of the day. The baths. It began now, in the fading light, as they made their way to the one place that offered a universal escape from the stress of the day. The baths. But before you step through the grand, echoing entrance of the bathhouse, let's pause for a moment. You look up. The last sliver of the sun is gone, and the first stars are beginning to prick the darkening fabric of the sky. You think about time. To truly understand the Roman approach to sleep, you first have to understand the Roman clock. And the Roman clock, for most of their history, was the sun itself. Their entire conception of a day was far more fluid, more organic, and more frustratingly imprecise than our own. For us, an hour is a fixed, immutable thing. 60 minutes, 60 seconds each. A Tuesday hour is the same length as a Saturday hour. A July hour is the same as a January hour. Not for the Romans. They took the period of daylight from the moment the sun rose to the moment it set, and divided it into 12 equal portions, the hori. This meant that a daylight hora, or hour, in the long, lazy days of summer could be up to 75 of our modern minutes long. In the short, frantic days of winter, a daylight hour might be only 45 minutes long. This system makes perfect sense until you try to schedule anything. A 1-hour business meeting in summer could be a sprawling, relaxed affair, while the same meeting in winter would be a brisk, hurried burst of activity. It's a complete nightmare for anyone trying to run a tight schedule, which might explain why so many accounts of Roman life are filled with people waiting around for other people to measure these shifting hours. Romans relied on the sun. In public spaces like the Forum, there were enormous sundials, or solaria. You can picture a huge, circular, bronze dial with lines carved into it, a great central gnomon casting its sharp shadow to mark the time. Wealthier Romans might even carry a small, portable, pocket-sized sundial, a little scoop of bronze or ivory that had to be carefully oriented to the north to work. The problem, of course, was that the sun is a fickle timekeeper. On a cloudy day, the sundial was just a useless piece of public sculpture. A fun, quirky tidbit of Roman history is that one of the very first public sundials they ever had was completely wrong. In 263 BC, a consul brought one back as war booty from the city of Catania in Sicily. He proudly set it up in the Forum for everyone to use. The only problem was that it had been calibrated for the latitude of Catania, which is significantly south of Rome, for nearly a century. The official time in the heart of the capital city was proudly and consistently inaccurate. No one, it seems, knew how to build a better one or adjust the old one. They just used the wrong clock, which is a level of commitment to flawed technology that you almost have to admire to solve the cloudy day problem. They also had water clocks, or klepsydrae, the water thieves we've heard about from the Greeks. These were more accurate, but were complicated to maintain and were mostly used for official business, like timing a lawyer's speech in the courtroom to make sure he didn't drone on for too long. For the average person, the position of the sun in the sky was all the clock they needed. Their day was governed by a simple, ancient rhythm: sunrise, midday meal, sunset. The night was a different story. It too was divided into 12 hori, from sunset to sunrise. But without the sun, these were much harder to track. More commonly, the night was divided into 4 military-style watches, or vigili. The first watch began at sunset, the second watch around 9 p.m., the third at midnight, and the fourth watch around 3 a.m., ending at sunrise. So, if a Roman writer tells you something happened in the second watch, you know it happened in the deep evening. This division of the night was a practical matter, but for most Romans, the night was not a time for practicality. It was a time of deep-seated fear and superstition. You must understand that the Roman night was truly, profoundly dark. The only light came from the moon, the stars, and the flickering, smoky flames of oil lamps. or the torches carried by the wealthy and their bodyguards. This darkness transformed the familiar city into a place of mystery and menace. The fears were both real and supernatural. The threat of burglars was constant. The danger of fire in the tinderbox insulae was so great that many people were forbidden from having cooking fires in their apartments after dark. But the supernatural fears were perhaps even more potent. The Roman night was a time when the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead was thought to be thin. It was a time for ghosts, or Lemures restless, malevolent spirits of the dead who had not been properly buried or who had met a violent end. The Roman night was basically one long, citywide episode of a paranormal investigation show. Every creak of the floorboards wasn't just the building settling. It was potentially your undead great uncle, Tiberius, back from the underworld to complain that you didn't leave out enough wine for him at the last family festival. Historians still argue about how deeply these supernatural beliefs penetrated all levels of Roman society. Did the educated, skeptical upper classes who read Greek philosophy truly believe in these spirits? Or were these the fears of the common folk, the uneducated masses? The evidence suggests that even the most sophisticated Romans, for all their public talk of logic and reason, were not immune to a shiver of fear in the deep, silent darkness of the third watch. So, this is the world of Roman time. A day of fluid, sun-drenched hours filled with the business of life, and a night of deep, dangerous, and ghost-filled darkness. This rhythm, this stark division between the world of light and the world of shadow, dictated everything about their approach to the evening. The socializing was to prepare the body and the mind for the nightly journey into that quiet, intimidating dark. And that journey for almost every Roman began with the warm, steamy, and sociable embrace of the baths. Section 3. The entire purpose of the Roman evening routine. The cleansing, the eating, the socializing was to prepare the body and the mind for the nightly journey into that quiet, intimidating dark. And that journey, for almost every Roman, began with the warm, steamy, and sociable embrace of the baths. So you make your way through the twilight streets to the local thermae. Even a modest neighborhood bath is an impressive building of brick and marble, its entrance bustling with people. You pay your tiny entrance via single quadrans, the smallest Roman coin. Price so low that even the poorest citizen could usually afford a 10-step inside. The change in atmosphere is immediate. The dusty, noisy chaos of the street is replaced by the echoing sound of voices, the constant splash of water, and the humid, warm air that smells of steam and scented oils. Your first stop is the appetiterium, the changing room. It's a loud, lively space filled with the chatter of friends meeting after a day's work. You find a spot on a bench and undress, folding your tunic and placing it in a small niche carved into the wall. This was a place of great trust, or rather, of great potential anxiety. Theft from the baths was a common complaint. If you were wealthy, you would have a slave, a capsurius, whose entire job was to guard your clothes while you bathed. If you were poor, you simply hoped for the best. From the changing room, you might head to the palestra, a large open-air courtyard for exercise. Here, you see men in various states of sweaty exertion. Some are lifting primitive dumbbells made of stone or metal. Others are engaged in a grunting match of wrestling, their bodies slick with oil. A group of younger men are playing a fast-paced ball game, a kind of Roman dodgeball. The goal here wasn't a grueling workout, but to work up a light sweat, to open the pores and prepare the body for the heat to come. It was the ancient equivalent of a quick session on the elliptical before heading to the sauna. Now, the main event begins. You enter the heated rooms, the heart of the bathing experience. The genius of the Roman baths was their sophisticated underfloor heating system, the hypocaust, a massive furnace tended by slaves, would generate hot air that circulated through a raised space under the marble floors and was channeled up through pipes in the walls. This allowed for a sequence of rooms with different, precisely controlled temperatures. You begin in the tepidarium, the warm room. The heat here is gentle, pleasant. The floor is warm beneath your feet. The air is humid. This is a transition space, a place to acclimate your body to the heat and, more importantly, to socialize. You see men lounging on marble benches, gossiping about the latest political scandal, complaining about the price of olives, or closing a business deal. It was the office water cooler, the local pub, and a health spa, all rolled into one. Next, you push open a heavy door and enter the caldarium, the hot room. The change is intense. A thick, wet steam hangs in the air, so dense you can barely see across the room. The heat is deep and penetrating. In the center of the room is a large pool of steaming hot water for soaking. Here, the real business of getting clean begins, and it is a very different process from our own. Romans did not use soap. Instead, you cover your body in a thin layer of olive oil. Then, either a slave or a bath attendant takes a strigil, a curved bronze or iron scraper, and methodically scrapes the oil from your skin. It's a strange sensation, but the strigil takes not only the oil, but also all the dirt, grime, and dead skin from your body. It sounds less like a spa day and more like you're being prepared for a stir-fry. But it was the absolute height of Roman hygiene. And now for a truly quirky and slightly disgusting tidbit of Roman life. The gunk that was scraped off with a stridulous mixture of oil, sweat, and dirt called strigmentum was sometimes collected. Unbelievably, some Roman women would buy this substance, believing it had special cosmetic or medicinal properties, and use it as a kind of face cream. You have to wonder what the marketing slogan was. Get that authentic gladiator glow, now with 50% more authentic gladiator. Asterisk, after the intense heat of the caldarium, you make your way to the final stop on the circuit, the frigidarium, the cold room. Here, you take a deep breath and plunge into a large, unheated pool of shockingly cold water. The thermal shock is immense, but invigorating. It closes the pores, washes away any remaining oil, and leaves you feeling completely refreshed. Your skin tingling as you dry off. You might reflect on the social dynamics of this space. Archaeologists and historians still debate the exact social etiquette of mixed-gender bathing. While some early bathhouses were built for both men and women, the practice seems to have been controversial and was frowned upon by many moralists. Most of the grand imperial baths had separate, though often unequal, facilities for men and women, or they had different opening hours for each. For the most part, your trip to the baths would have been a largely single-gender affair. Leaving the bathing chambers, you might wander through the rest of the complex. The larger imperial baths were not just for bathing. They were vast public leisure centers. There might be libraries, gardens to stroll through, rooms for poetry readings, and even stalls selling snacks and drinks. It was a place where a Roman could spend their entire afternoon, tending to body, mind, and social life all at once. But now, as true evening descends, the crowds begin to thin. You emerge from the bathhouse back onto the darkening street. You feel clean, relaxed, your muscles loose from the heat, your mind calm from the hours of socializing. The stresses of the Roman day have been washed away. You are now physically and mentally prepared for the next, and perhaps most important part of the wind-down routine, the evening meal. The cena, the stresses of the Roman day have been washed away. You are now physically and mentally prepared for the next and perhaps most important part of the wind-down routine, the evening meal, the cena, that feeling clean and utterly relaxed. You make your way home through the deep twilight. The streets are darker now, lit only by the occasional torch outside a wealthy home, or the flickering oil lamps from shop fronts. The smell of cooking is everywhere. 1,000 different dinners mingling in the cool night air. And your experience of this meal, the main meal of the Roman day, depends entirely on who you are. If you are a common plebeian, you return to your small room in the towering insula. Your cena is a simple, hearty affair. The centerpiece is likely pulse, a thick porridge, made from spelt or barley, the foundational dish of Roman cuisine for centuries. Alongside it, you might have a thick wedge of coarse, dark bread, some boiled cabbage or leeks, a handful of beans, and perhaps a small piece of salty cheese. Meat is a rare luxury. You eat sitting on a simple stool at a small wooden table with your family. The meal is quick, it is functional, and its purpose is simple: to fill your belly and provide the fuel for another day of hard labor. But if you are a wealthy Roman, the cena is not just a meal. It is a theatrical performance. You arrive back at your quiet domus and are led to the dining room, the triclinium. The room itself is a work of art. The floor is covered in intricate mosaics, depicting scenes from mythology or geometric patterns. The walls are adorned with colorful frescoes of landscapes or gardens designed to make the room feel open and luxurious. Instead of a table and chairs, the room is dominated by 3 wide couches arranged in a U shape around a central serving. Table. Here, you and the other guests perform the curious ritual of dining while reclining. You lie on your left side, propped up on plush cushions, leaving your right hand free to pick at the food. It's a posture that looks incredibly uncomfortable to our modern eyes, but for the Romans, it was the very definition of civilized leisure, a status symbol borrowed from the Greeks. It requires a certain core strength and a deep acceptance that you are probably going to spill an elaborate sauce on your very white, very expensive toga. The meal begins. A slave comes around with a basin of scented water to wash your hands. The first course, the gustaccio or appetizer, is served. This might be a selection of eggs, fresh salads, olives, or shellfish, all washed down with malsum, a sweet wine mixed with honey. One of the most prized and peculiar delicacies you might be offered is a roasted dormouse. These were not common field mice. They were a special kind of dormouse, the glees, which were fattened up in special terracotta jars called gloraria. Imagine your host presenting this dish with pride. Just a little something I whipped up. It's a rodent I've been fattening in a jar for the last 3 months. It certainly puts your modern cheese and crackers into perspective. Then comes the main event, the prime mense. A succession of dishes is brought out, each more elaborate than the last. You might see whole roasted boars, suckling pigs, exotic birds like peacocks or flamingos served with their feathers reattached, and fish. swimming in rich sauces made with wine, herbs, and that ubiquitous Roman flavor enhancer, garum. As you eat, there is entertainment. A musician might be softly plucking a lyre in the corner, or a poet might be reciting the latest verses. Finally, the dessert course, the seconde mense, arrives. Fresh fruits, nuts, and sweet cakes made with honey. The entire meal could last for hours, a slow, sociable ritual of eating, drinking, and conversation. But woven into this culinary experience was a deep-seated belief that what you ate in the evening had a direct impact on your sleep. Roman physicians like Galen wrote extensively on the subject, and their advice is surprisingly familiar. They warned that overeating, especially rich, greasy, or spicy foods, would lead to a restless night filled with disturbing dreams as the stomach struggled to digest the heavy meal. Drinking too much wine was also cautioned against, as it might help you fall asleep initially, but would lead to fragmented, poor quality rest. On the other hand, certain foods were actively prescribed as sleep aids, and the Romans were absolutely obsessed with one in particular: lettuce. Wild lettuce contains a milky sap that has mild sedative properties. The Romans were convinced it was a powerful soporific. The Emperor Augustus was so certain that lettuce had cured a bout of his insomnia that he reportedly built an altar and dedicated a statue in its honor. It's a level of devotion to salad that most of us can only dream of. A light, simple meal, perhaps some bread, vegetables, and a large helping of lettuce was considered the perfect prelude to a peaceful night. Historians and classicists still debate the role of women at these formal dinner parties. Unlike in ancient Greece, where respectable women were generally excluded from male social gatherings, Roman women of the household were present at the cena. However, their level of participation, whether they always reclined with the men or sometimes sat in chairs, and how much they contributed to the often high-minded, philosophical and political discussions likely varied greatly depending on the era and the specific family's customs. As the final course is cleared away, the evening begins to wind down. If you are at a dinner party, the guests might stay for a final cup of wine before being escorted home through the dark streets by their torch-bearing slaves. If you are in your humble apartment, the remnants of your simple meal are put away. Your body is pleasantly full. Your mind is relaxed from the social interaction or the simple comfort of a family meal. You have cleansed yourself at the baths, and you have nourished yourself at the dinner table. You are now another step closer to bed. But for the Roman who struggled with sleep, one final preparation might be necessary: a visit to the medicine cabinet for a little help from the world of pharmacology. You are now another step closer to bed. But for the Roman who struggled with sleep, one final preparation might be necessary. A visit to the medicine cabinet for a little help from the world of pharmacology. Your Roman medicine cabinet. The Arcla is not a mirrored cupboard full of plastic pill bottles and blister packs. It is a small, often intricately carved wooden chest. You lift the lid. Inside, the air is dry and fragrant with the scent of 100 different dried plants. You see small linen bags filled with leaves and seeds, little clay jars holding mysterious powders, and stoppered glass vials containing dark, thick liquids. This is the Roman pharmacy, a treasure trove of herbal remedies passed down through generations. The medical theory behind these remedies was based on the idea of the four humors. The belief that the body was governed by a balance of four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health was a state of balance, and sickness was a state of imbalance. If you couldn't sleep, a Roman physician like the great Galen might explain that your brain was too hot and dry, a state associated with wakefulness and agitation. The goal of a sleep aid, a soporificum, was therefore to introduce a cool and moist influence to calm the overheated mind and coax it into a state of rest. It sounds a bit like mystical plumbing, but it was the guiding principle of Western medicine for over 1,000 years. Asterisk. So what would you choose from your little chest of remedies? If you wanted a mild, gentle nudge towards slumber, you would probably start with the emperor's favorite, lettuce. As we've heard, the Romans were convinced of its power. This was thanks to the plant's milky white sap, known today as lacticarium, which they called lettuce opium. A physician would prescribe a simple dinner of boiled lettuce or a drink made from a decoction of its seeds to cool the mind. You can imagine a Roman tossing and turning, finally getting up and trudging to the kitchen to sadly munch on a plate of wilted leaves in the hopes of getting some rest. If the lettuce wasn't cutting it, you might move on to other common, relatively safe herbs. You might brew an infusion of chamomile flowers, just as we do today, for its calming properties. Or perhaps some valerian root, a plant whose sedative effects are still widely used in modern herbal medicine. A popular and refreshing drink that could be taken before bed was posca. This was a simple mixture of water and soured wine or vinegar, often sweetened with a bit of honey and infused with herbs. While it sounds rather unappealing, it was a staple for Roman soldiers and common people. It was hydrating. The vinegar killed bacteria in the water, and if you mixed in the right herbs, it could be a perfectly pleasant, mildly relaxing nightcap. It was the Roman version of sleepy time tea, if your tea tasted faintly of salad dressing. But what if your insomnia was serious? What if you were in pain or your mind was racing with anxiety? For that, the Roman pharmacy had its heavy hitters, the powerful and potentially dangerous narcotics. The most famous and widely used of these was, of course, opium, derived from the beautiful and potent opium poppy, Papaver somniferum. The Romans were well aware of its power. They knew it could kill pain, induce a deep, dreamless sleep, and that it was highly addictive. Opium was a key ingredient in many complex medical compounds. Like thuriac, a famous curable paste that sometimes contained dozens of ingredients. For sleep, a small amount of opium might be mixed into a cup of wine, creating a powerful sedative. It was effective, but it was a medicine to be treated with immense respect. Then there were the truly mysterious and intimidating plants. You might have a small, carefully guarded piece of mandrake root. The mandragora was a plant surrounded by superstition, famous for its forked root that sometimes resembles a human figure. It was a powerful narcotic and hallucinogen, and the process of harvesting it was said to be so dangerous that it could kill the person who pulled it from the ground. It was used in small doses as a potent sleep aid and in larger doses as one of the ancient world's most effective surgical anesthetics. Beside it, you might find a pouch of henbane. This was another powerful and highly toxic plant. Roman physicians knew it could calm a racing mind and induce sleep, but the dosage had to be exact. The line between a gentle sedative and an accidental coma was a very fine one. Historians of medicine still debate how effective many of the milder herbal remedies actually were beyond their placebo effect. While substances like opium, mandrake, and henbane had undeniable pharmacological power, the true efficacy of others, like a simple chamomile infusion, is less clear. Was it the subtle chemical properties of the herbs that worked the magic? Or was it the calming ritual itself, the slow preparation of the drink, the physician's solemn authority, and the patient's own belief that they were doing something to help themselves that truly soothed the troubled mind and allowed sleep to come? It was likely a potent combination of both, so you make your choice. You bypass the dangerous narcotics and opt for a safe, comforting cup of wine infused with valerian root and sweetened with a little honey. You drink it slowly, letting the warmth spread through your body. The noise of the city outside has quieted down a little. The meal has settled in your stomach. The day's anxieties are beginning to feel distant. And so, with a mind calmed by a gentle herbal draft and a body relaxed from the heat of the baths, you are finally ready. You pick up a small, flickering oil lamp to light your way, and head you pick up a small, flickering oil lamp to light your way and head towards the most private, most intimate room in the entire Roman house. The bedroom, your small lamp, a simple clay vessel with a wick floating in olive oil, casts long, dancing shadows on the walls as you walk down the quiet, covered corridor of your domus. You pass the entrance to the grand dining room, now dark and silent, and come to a heavy curtain. You pull it aside and step into your cubiculum. The word itself comes from the Latin verb cubare, to lie down, and that tells you everything you need to know about the room's primary purpose. This is not the multifunctional bedroom of the modern world. You will not find a television, a desk for working, or a comfortable chair for reading. The Roman bedroom was a masterclass in minimalism. It was a small, private sanctuary designed almost exclusively for the act of sleep. Your cubiculum is a small, rectangular room. It has no windows to the outside world. Its only opening is the doorway you just came through, which looks out onto the quiet interior of the house, perhaps the central atrium with its rainwater pool, or a peaceful walled garden, the peristyle. It keeps out the noise and the smells of the street, and it makes the room profoundly dark, a perfect cave-like environment for sleeping, especially for the midday nap, the moridiatio, which was a common practice. Your lamp's soft, golden light reveals walls covered in frescoes. Unlike the grand, dramatic scenes you might find in the public rooms of the house, the art here is chosen to be calming. You might see a peaceful landscape of rolling hills and cypress trees, a garden scene with birds, or perhaps a gentle mythological scene like the story of the moon goddess Selene visiting her sleeping lover, the shepherd Endymion. The floor beneath your feet is a simple but elegant mosaic, perhaps a repeating geometric pattern that feels cool under your bare feet. The furniture is sparse. In one corner stands your lamp on a tall, slender bronze stand. Against another wall is a large wooden chest, an arca bound with iron straps. This is your closet. All of your tunics, togas, and cloaks are folded and kept in here, which means your best formal wear is probably perpetually wrinkled and smells faintly of the cedar wood used to repel moths. There might be a small, low table beside the bed, but that's it. The room is dominated by a single piece of furniture, the bed itself. The lectus cubic ULAR. It looks more like a modern couch or a daybed than what we would recognize as a bed. The frame is made of heavy, dark wood, or, for the very wealthy, of ornate cast bronze. It has a high, solid headboard, but no footboard. The whole frame is raised high off the ground on carved legs, and you need a small wooden stool to climb into it. The height is practical. It keeps you up and away from the cold drafts that might snake across the floor. This quiet, minimalist sanctuary is the patrician ideal. But for the vast majority of Romans living in the crowded insulae, this level of privacy and peace was an unimaginable luxury. Their bedroom was not a room at all, but simply a designated corner of the single, noisy room their entire family lived in. Sleep was not a private act, but a communal one, performed amidst the snores, coughs, and movements of parents, children, and sometimes even lodgers. Their bed was a simple, straw-stuffed pallet on the floor, or, if they were slightly better off, a crude wooden bunk. Rest was something snatched in a world that was never truly quiet or private. Archaeologists still debate the true function of the more elaborate cubiculi found in grand houses. While the name clearly implies sleeping, the fact that they were often beautifully decorated and sometimes located near the public areas of the Doma suggests they might have had a dual purpose. They may have also been used by the master of the house to receive private guests or to conduct sensitive business meetings, blurring the modern line between a purely private bedroom and a semi-public office. For the truly absurdly wealthy, the desire for a private sleeping space could reach extravagant heights. The Emperor Hadrian, for instance, built a sprawling villa at Tivoli. At its heart was his private retreat, a maritime theater, a small, circular island with a miniature villa on it, surrounded by a moat-like pool. This island retreat was his ultimate cubiculum, his private study and bedroom, accessible only by a series of retractable wooden bridges. When you're the emperor and you really want to get a good night's sleep, you don't just hang a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. You build yourself a bedroom with a moat. It's the ultimate power move against unwanted visitors and early morning appointments, asterisks, but for you, in your more modest but still comfortable domus. This small, dark room is enough. You place your oil lamp on the small table beside the bed, its single flame creating a small pool of light in the deep darkness. The silence of the house settles around you, a thick, comforting blanket. You have bathed, you have eaten, you have taken your calming nightcap. You have arrived at your final destination for the day. You step onto the small stool and prepare to climb into bed, the stage upon which the nightly drama of Roman sleep will unfold. And it is the bed itself, its construction and its comforts that we must now turn to. You lie in your bed in the absolute dark and listen. Every hoot of a real owl in the garden outside, every flutter of a bat's wings could be misinterpreted by a fearful mind. You might feel a weight on your chest, the telltale sign of an incubus, a spirit thought to press down upon sleepers, causing the terrifying experience we now call sleep paralysis. And so, lying in the dark, surrounded by these fears, both real and imagined, a Roman did not simply hope for the best. They did not count sheep. They actively sought protection from these threats. They turned to ritual, to charms, and to the gods themselves to guard them through the long, vulnerable hours of the night. It was an act of spiritual self-defense, a final preparation before surrendering to the defenseless state of sleep. They actively sought protection from these threats. They turned to ritual, to charms, and to the gods themselves to guard them through the long, vulnerable hours of the night. It was an act of spiritual self-defense, a final preparation before surrendering to the defenseless state of sleep. So, as you lie in the absolute darkness of your cubiculum, cocooned in your heavy wool blankets, you begin the quiet, internal rituals of the Roman night. Your first and most important appeal is to the gods, but you don't bother Jupiter or Mars with this. For the specific anxieties of the night, you turn to a more specialized, more mysterious deity, Somnus, the god of sleep. Somnus is the Roman version of the Greek god Hypnos. He is not one of the boisterous, theatrical gods of Mount Olympus. He is an older, more primal force. The poet Ovid, in his great work, The Metamorphoses, gives us a wonderfully sleepy description of Somnus's home. He lives in a dark, silent cave in the land of the Cimmerians, a place of eternal twilight. No sunlight ever penetrates his home. No roosters crow, no dogs bark. No sound ever breaks the profound stillness. The only plants that grow around his cave are poppies and other sleep-inducing herbs. Flowing through his cave is a branch of the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, and its gentle murmuring is said to induce drowsiness. It sounds less like a divine realm and more like the perfect design for a 5-star luxury sleep spa. Here, in this impossibly quiet place, Somnus himself lies on a soft black ebony couch, perpetually on the verge of slumber, and attending him are his many sons, the Somnia, who are the personifications of dreams. The Romans had a whole divine family just for managing the content of your subconscious. The 3 most famous sons had very specific jobs. The first was Morpheus, the one we still remember today. He was the artist, the one who could expertly craft dreams that featured human forms. If you dreamt of your grandmother or the emperor, that was the work of Morpheus. His brother, Isolus or Phobeter, had a more unsettling job. He was the one who shaped dreams of animals, beasts, and monsters. He was the divine author of your nightmares. And the third brother, Phantasos, was the specialist in dreams about inanimate objects. If you had a vivid dream about a talking lamp or a flying mountain, that was the work of Phantasos. So your prayer, whispered into your feather-stuffed pillow, would be a simple one. An appeal to Somnus to grant you a deep and peaceful rest, and a polite but firm request that he keep his son, Phobetor, and his menagerie of monsters far away from your mind tonight. You would also send a quiet prayer to your household gods, the Lares, whose little shrine, the Lararium, sits in the atrium of your house. You pray that they will watch over the home and guard it from the more tangible threats of fire and intruders. Historians of Roman religion often debate the level of sincere belief versus traditional ritualism in these practices. When a Roman whispered a prayer to Somnus, were they acting out of a deep, genuine faith in his power? Or was it more a matter of comforting ingrained habit, a spiritual just-in-case passed down through generations, much like a modern person might say, "Bless you," after a sneeze, without consciously thinking about its ancient, plague-related origins? The truth is likely a mixture of both. After the prayers, you might reach for a more physical form of protection, an amulet. The Romans were great believers in the power of amuleta, small charms worn to ward off evil and bring good luck. You might have a piece of amber or polished coral on a string around your neck, both thought to have protective qualities. Roman children were especially vulnerable, and they wore a special locket called a bulla from birth, which contained a collection of protective charms. They would wear it every day until they came of age, a constant shield against sickness and malevolent spirits. But one of the most common and, to our eyes, most surprising forms of protection was the fascinum. This was the divine phallus, a symbol of generative, aggressive power that was thought to be a potent deterrent against the evil eye and other dark forces. These symbols were everywhere in the Roman world, and they were not considered obscene in the way we might see them today. They were simply powerful good luck charms. You might have a small bronze phallic amulet in your bulla or hung by your bed. Some houses even had tintinnabulae elaborate wind chimes featuring bells and multiple phallic charms, which were hung in gardens or near doorways. The idea was that the combination of the chiming sound and the powerful symbol would literally frighten evil spirits away. It's a design choice that would certainly make your modern home security system a conversation starter. But it was a perfectly normal and respected form of spiritual protection. Feeling secure now, wrapped in your blankets, your prayers uttered, your lucky charms nearby, your mind is finally free to let go. You have cleansed your body, fed it a calming meal, soothed it with a gentle potion, and shielded your spirit with ritual and magic. The darkness of the cubiculum no longer feels threatening, but comforting. It is a quiet, private void, a safe harbor from the cares of the world. But what happens if, despite all of this careful preparation, a dream still comes? What if Morpheus or one of his brothers pays you a visit? For the Romans, that was not an interruption to be forgotten by morning. That was when the real work began. A dream was not just a random firing of synapses. It was a message, and it needed to be decoded. A dream was not just a random firing of synapses. It was a message, and it needed to be decoded. And so you fall asleep. And in the strange, silent theater of your mind, a play begins. A dream, a somnium, unfolds, populated by the divine actors sent by Somnus and his sons. When you wake in the morning, or even in the middle of the night, the memory of this dream is not something to be brushed aside like a stray thought. For the Romans, as for most of the ancient world, dreams were a direct line of communication from the gods. They were prophecies, warnings, divine medical advice, or omens of good or bad fortune. To ignore a powerful dream was to hang up the phone on the gazza, foolish and potentially dangerous act. The first task of the morning was to determine what kind of dream you had. The Romans made a distinction. Was it a simple insomnium, a meaningless and muddled vision caused by indigestion from that extra piece of roasted pork at the cena, or by the anxieties of the previous day? Or was it a true somnium, a clear, vivid, and significant dream sent from the divine realm? If it was the latter, you had to take it seriously. You would recount it to your spouse or your household slaves. If the dream was particularly vivid or disturbing, you might seek out a professional, an interpret's somniaram, a professional dream interpreter. This was a serious and respected profession. You could find these interpreters in the marketplace or near major temples. It was like having a therapist for your subconscious, but instead of helping you work through your childhood issues, they would tell you whether your dream about a talking horse meant you should go ahead with that big business deal or not. These interpreters relied on a complex tradition of symbolism, much of which was eventually written down in great dream dictionaries. The most famous and complete one to survive is a 5-volume masterpiece called the One Critica, or the Interpretation of Dreams, written in the 2nd century AD by a Greek author living under Roman rule named Artemidorus. His book is a fascinating window into the ancient mind, a massive catalog of dream symbols and their meanings. It's basically the what to expect when you're dreaming of the Roman world. Had a dream about an elephant, turn to page 52. Dreamt you were a artichoke. He's got a section for that too. Probably. Asterisk, what's so fascinating about his system is that it wasn't a simple 1-to-1 code. The meaning of a dream symbol depended entirely on who you were and your circumstances. For example, says that to dream of flying is a good sign for a slave, as it means he will be raised up above his station. But for a wealthy man, the same dream is a bad omen, suggesting instability and restlessness. Context was everything. Let's say you dreamt you lost all your teeth, a common anxiety dream even today. Artemidorus would tell you this relates to your household. Your teeth are the people who live in your house and help you process your livelihood. The upper teeth are the more important people, the lower teeth the less important. So, to dream you lost all your teeth meant you would lose your entire household, a rather grim way to start your day. You drift a little deeper, and other, more rhythmic sounds filter into your consciousness. It's the sound of work. The Roman city never truly slept. In the third or fourth watch of the night, in the hours just before dawn, the city's bakers, the pisters, would begin their work. You can hear the low, rhythmic grinding of the grain mills, a heavy, hypnotic sound. Sometimes these mills were powered by a weary donkey, trudging in an endless circle, a small bell around its neck, perhaps muffled with cloth to lessen the noise. Soon after, you might hear the distant, metallic clang of a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil as a smith began his work in the cool of the early morning. And then there were the schools. Some Roman schoolmasters started their lessons before the sun was even up. You can imagine the sound floating through the pre-dawn air, the monotonous sing-song drone of young boys loudly reciting their Virgil or practicing their Greek declensions. Imagine your alarm clock being the sound of your neighbors. 7-year-old loudly conjugating Latin verbs at 4 in the morning. It is enough to make anyone wish for a quieter line of work. If you were sleeping in a crowded insula, these distant, industrial sounds would be the least of your worries. Your main sonic assault would be coming from right next door. The walls were paper thin. You would hear every argument your neighbors had, the cry of their baby, the loud snores of the man in the room above you, the drunken singing of a group of young men stumbling up the stairs after a late night out. There was no soundproofing, no privacy, just the constant, unavoidable, and deeply intimate noise of hundreds of other lives being lived just inches away from your own. Historians and archaeologists debate how Romans psychologically coped with this level of noise. Did they simply have a much higher tolerance for it, having been born into a world without silence? Or did the constant, inescapable noise contribute to high levels of stress and anxiety? a hidden environmental factor that is impossible to measure. From bones and potsherds, but which is hinted at in the exasperated writings of the city's poets and satirists. Amidst the human and industrial noise, there was also the sound of animals. The city was full of them. Dogs would bark at passers-by. The miller's donkey would occasionally let out a mournful bray. And most significantly, there were the roosters. The rooster's crow was the natural alarm clock of the ancient world. But roosters are not always considerate. They don't just crow at dawn. They crow whenever they feel like it. The annoyance was so universal that there is a story about the ancient city of Sybaris, a place famous for its luxurious and pleasure-seeking lifestyle. The Sybarites were supposedly so dedicated to sleeping in that they passed a law banning all roosters from being kept within the city walls. It is a wonderfully forward-thinking piece of noise pollution legislation. You have to imagine the political party that ran on that platform: a rooster in no pot and a good night's sleep for all. They would have my vote, so you lie there. And this strange urban symphony washes over you. The distant rumble of a cart, the rhythmic grinding of a mill, the faint murmur of a neighbor's voice, the lonely bark of a dog. You are protected from the worst of it in your dark, quiet cubiculum. For you, perhaps, these sounds are not a torment. They are just a reminder that the great city is still alive around you, its heart still beating even in the deepest part of the night. But now, one sound begins to cut through all the others. It is faint at first, then closer. It is the unmistakable, piercing cry of a rooster. Then another answers it, and another. The journey through the darkness is almost over. A new day is being announced. The night is ending. The journey through the darkness is almost over. The rooster's crow is nature's alarm clock, the one the entire ancient world shared. It is soon joined by another, and then another, a ragged but insistent chorus that spreads across the 7 hills. As the first hint of pale gray light begins to filter down through the open compluvium in the roof of your atrium, you begin to stir. Waking up in Rome is not a sudden, violent event, punctuated by a blaring digital alarm. It is a slow, gradual process, a gentle re-entry into the world of the living. The light grows stronger, painting a soft square on the atrium floor that slowly creeps across the mosaic tiles. This is your primary clock, the sun itself telling you that the first hora of the new day has begun. Your body, attuned to these natural rhythms, responds. Without the constant pollution of artificial light, your internal clock would be far more sensitive to the subtle shifts from dark to dawn. Soon, the natural sounds are joined by the sounds of the household waking up. You hear the soft shuffle of slaves' footsteps outside your cubiculum, a quiet clatter from the kitchen as the cook begins to prepare the morning's simple meal, the rhythmic whisk of a broom as a cleaner sweeps the atrium floor. For a wealthy Roman, the day officially began when the staff went to work. If you were particularly important, you might even have a dedicated slave, a cubicularius, whose job it was to enter your room at a predetermined time and gently wake you, perhaps by opening a shutter or with a soft word. It is the ultimate luxury. Alarm clock, no snooze button, but you can probably tell him to come back in 5 minutes, and he is far less likely to make an annoying beeping sound. You rise from your bed and begin the simple rituals of the morning. You walk to a basin of cool water and perform your morning ablutions, quick wash of the hands and face. Dental hygiene is a priority for those who can afford it. You might take a small, frayed stick, a dentifricium, and rub your teeth, perhaps with a special tooth powder. These powders were made from abrasive materials like crushed bone, powdered eggshells, or oyster shells designed to scrub the teeth clean. A more potent ingredient mentioned by the poet Catullus was aged human urine, which was known for the whitening properties of its ammonia content. While likely not a universal practice, it certainly gives a new meaning to the phrase, a dazzling smile. Next, you get dressed. This is a simple affair. The base layer for almost everyone is a simple linen or wool tunic, the tunica. If you are a citizen going out to the forum for business or politics, you must now perform the complex ritual of putting on your toga. This was not a simple garment. It was a huge, semicircular piece of heavy wool cloth, anywhere from 12 to 20 feet long. Draping it correctly was a skill, an art form that required assistance. A slave would help you fold, pleat, and wrap it around your body in just the right way to look dignified and important, rather than looking like you have accidentally gotten tangled in your own bed sheets, asterisk with your toga properly arranged. You are ready for your breakfast, the yentaculum. But this is not the grand, leisurely meal of your previous evening. The Roman breakfast was a quick, functional, and often solitary affair. You might eat a piece of coarse bread dipped in a little wine or olive oil, perhaps some dates, figs, or a piece of cheese. Often, it was simply the leftovers from last night's cena. You would eat it standing up in a few minutes before heading out the door. It was a simple refueling before the business of the day began. Many Romans, especially in the heat of the summer, would structure their day around a long midday rest, the meridiatio or siesta. They would work through the morning, come home for a light lunch and a long nap during the hottest part of the day, and then perhaps return to work or head to the baths in the late afternoon. Historians debate the true nature and importance of this practice. Was the siesta a universal daily rhythm for all social classes, a biological necessity in the Mediterranean climate? Or was it primarily a luxury of the elite who had the time and the cool, private domus to retreat to, while the vast majority of the working poor, the shopkeepers, the laborers, the craftsmen, had no choice but to toil through the oppressive heat of the midday sun? Asterisk for you. However, a member of the comfortable classes, the day is now laid out. You have woken gently with the sun. You have performed your morning rituals. You are clean, dressed, and ready to re-enter the bustling world of the Roman Forum. You step out of the quiet sanctuary of your domos and onto the noisy, crowded street. And as you do, you see the other side of Rome waking up. The street is already teeming with people, porters carrying goods, messengers rushing past, shopkeepers opening their stalls. These are the hundreds of thousands of people for whom the night was not a quiet retreat into a private, dark room. For them, the journey through the night was a far more precarious, noisy, and uncomfortable affair, and their morning is just as harsh. To truly understand Roman sleep, we must spend one final moment with them. And as you do, you see the other side of Rome waking up. The street is already teeming with people. Porters carrying goods, messengers rushing past, shopkeepers opening their stalls. These are the hundreds of thousands of people for whom the night was not a quiet retreat into a private, dark room. For them, the journey through the night was a far more precarious, noisy, and uncomfortable affair, and their morning is just as harsh. To truly understand Roman sleep, we must spend one final moment with them. So let's leave the quiet, spacious domus behind. Let your mind drift away from the world of mosaics and private gardens and float up to the fifth floor of a teetering, noisy insula in the heart of the Suburra, Rome's most crowded and chaotic neighborhood. The air up here is thick with the smell of wood smoke and cooking from 100 other apartments. You are in a single, small, dimly lit room, which is home to an entire family, baker, his wife, and their 3 children. This is where they live, eat, and sleep. For them, the winding down routine we have followed does not exist. The public baths are a possibility, but a hurried, anxious one. There is no slave to guard their threadbare tunics, so they must be constantly vigilant against thieves. The idea of a long, leisurely, multi-course cena is a fantasy, because cooking fires were often banned in these flammable, timber-framed buildings Their evening meal likely comes from a thermopolium down the street. This was the Roman takeaway. A small shop with a counter holding large clay jars of hot food, perhaps a bean stew or a simple porridge. It was fast, it was cheap, and it meant you didn't have to risk burning down the entire apartment block just to make dinner. As night falls, the family prepares for sleep. There is no private cubiculum. Their bedroom is the same room they have just eaten in. Their beds are simple pallets stuffed with straw, laid out on the wooden floor. There is no privacy. You hear every cough, every snore, every whispered word from your family members just inches away. And through the thin partition walls, you hear everything from your neighbors. The argument from the couple next door, the crying of the baby upstairs, the loud laughter from the apartment across the alleyway. In an insula, you knew everything about your neighbors. You knew their financial troubles, their marital squabbles, their nightly habits. It was the original, open-planned living concept, but with none of the trendy architectural design. The noise from the street, which was a distant rumble for the patrician in his domus, is an immediate, overwhelming presence here. The clatter of the supply carts, the shouts of the drivers, the drunken songs of revelers stumbling, hum, it all pours in through the single, unglazed window. Sociologists and Roman historians still debate the exact nature of community within these crowded insulae. Were they anonymous, alienating places that bred crime and despair, as the satirist Juvenal often portrayed them? Or did the close quarters and shared hardships foster a strong sense of community, a network of mutual support where neighbors looked out for each other, shared food, and formed a tight-knit social fabric? The reality was likely a complex and stressful mixture of both, and the fears of the night are magnified 100-fold. A burglar has a much easier time forcing the flimsy wooden door of your apartment than the heavy gate of a domus. And the fear of fire is a constant, terrifying reality. These buildings were notorious tinderboxes. The historian Strabo wrote that they were so poorly constructed and so prone to collapse and fire that it was a miracle they ever stood at all. To fall asleep in an insula was an act of faith, a hope that you would not be woken by the smell of smoke and the screams of your neighbors. With only a rickety wooden staircase between you and disaster, even their relationship with the supernatural was different. While the wealthy man might perform the Lemuria ritual to calmly exorcise the ghosts from his house, the poor were more likely to rely on simple, superstitious charms, a worn-out amulet, or a prayer whispered in the dark. Their world was closer to the raw, folkloric fears of the Italian countryside, a world of spirits and omens that the sophisticated, Greek-educated elite might publicly scoff at, but secretly fear. And yet, despite the noise, the crowding, the discomfort, and the fear, they slept. The baker and his family, after a grueling day of labor, would fall into the deep, heavy sleep of the truly exhausted. Their need for rest was not a luxury. It was a biological necessity, the only way to gather the strength to face another day of the same. Their sleep was not a gentle drift in a quiet harbor, but a desperate anchor dropped in the middle of a storm, holding on for a few precious hours until the harsh light of morning. The same rooster that gently roused the patrician from his slumber is a brutal, unwelcome summons for the baker. It means it is time to rise long before the sun and head down to the ovens to begin another day's work. His sleep and the sleep and the sleep of the millions who made up the Roman working class was shorter, rougher, and far more precious than that of the elite. And yet, the fundamental need for it, the deep, human yearning for a period of quiet oblivion, is the one thing that unites the master in his peaceful, frescoed bedroom and the baker in his noisy fifth-floor attic. It is the great equalizer of the Roman night. It is the great equalizer of the Roman night, and so our long journey through the Roman evening, from the sundown bustle of the street to the pre-dawn cry of the rooster, comes to an end. We have seen that this universal human need for rest, this nightly surrender to oblivion, was met with a fascinating mixture of sophisticated practicality, deep-seated superstition, and stark social inequality. As we look back, it's surprising how much of their sensible advice still echoes in our own wellness blogs and medical pamphlets today. The core principles of what we now call sleep hygiene were well understood by Roman physicians nearly 2,000 years ago. They knew that a light dinner was better than a heavy one. They understood that a regular routine of bathing, eating, and retiring at a similar time each evening was beneficial. They recommended a quiet, dark environment and calming activities like reading to prepare the mind for rest. In this, the ancient Roman and the modern human are not so very different, but woven into this practical wisdom was a thick thread of magic and belief that feels utterly alien to us. The idea that you might need to hang a phallic wind chime to frighten away a blood-drinking owl demon, or that the best cure for insomnia might be a dead lizard under your bed, reminds us that their world was animated by forces we no longer see. Their night was a far more mysterious and spiritually populated place than our own. This was true even in the most intimate spaces. Social historians still debate the true psychological impact of Roman slavery on the household, particularly at night. How did the constant, silent presence of enslaved people who were legally property but undeniably human, affect the sense of privacy and security for the slave-owning family as they slept? Was it a source of comfort knowing there were guards and attendants nearby? Or was it a source of deep, unspoken tension and fear? The anxiety of being surrounded by people who might have every reason to resent and harm you in your most vulnerable state. Even their attempts to control their subconscious feel both familiar and strange. Many people today still use crystals for their supposed calming properties. A wealthy Roman might do the same, perhaps placing a piece of polished amethyst by their bed. The word amethyst comes from the Greek for not intoxicated, and the stone was believed to prevent drunkenness. By extension, it was also thought to promote a sober, clear-minded sleep, free from the wild and chaotic dreams that might trouble a restless mind. So what is the legacy of the Roman night? It is a collection of whispers, of echoes in our own routines. It is the valerian root still sold in health food stores, the sound of water used in a modern sleep app, the basic, timeless advice to simply calm down before bed. The Roman guide to a good night's sleep was a strange cocktail of common sense and magical thinking, of profound anxiety and deep, ritualized comfort. But these are complex thoughts for the waking world. For now, we can let the intricate social structures of Rome dissolve. Let the details of the frescoes in the cubiculum and the crowded chaos of the insula begin to soften and fade. The story is told. The night has been navigated. What remains now is only the quiet. Let the memory of the city's noise, the clatter of the carts, and the shouts of the vendors recede into a deep and profound stillness. The flickering light of the oil lamp has been extinguished, and a different, softer light now fills your mind, the gentle silver light of the moon, shining down through the opening in the roof of a silent Roman house. You can see it glinting on the surface of the water in the impluvium, the little pool in the heart of the home. The air is cool and still. The fears of the night have been appeased. The anxieties of the day have been washed away, and all the household is asleep. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to analyze, only this feeling of deep architectural peace. You can let the final details go, allowing the image of the moonlit water to widen and soften, becoming a calm and gentle river, ready to carry you now on its quiet current